Hi, welcome to Healing Humanity. My name is Dina, and I want to talk to you today about breaking the chains. So, we all, especially me, live a life of complacency and desire. So we become complacent in the lives that we lead, meaning that like I always put God last. I repeated patterns in my life. I continued with same sins over and over again, not really considering what that was doing in my life or what that was doing for my soul, for the future, and for what it meant for my everlasting life, right? And the thing is that the complacency is a feeling of smug or uncritical satisfaction of for oneself. And I definitely felt that. As I was raising the girls, I remember thinking, I wasn't always perfect by far, but I remember thinking, I've repented and said sorry for the things that I may have done wrong, throughout my life when it was necessary. And I really didn't have any regrets. So I really believe that I became severely complacent with the way that my life was. But the thing is it wasn't healthy, it wasn't godly, and it wasn't positive. I was giving myself away so much that there was nothing left for me. And when I became sick, it sort of awakened something in me that made me realize that I had to find some peace. I had to find some healing within myself to be able to continue on in this world. And I needed to stop old patterns and not. God showed me, when He enlightened my heart, He showed me that I couldn't be complacent in the sins that I had become complacent in my life. And then also, there's to break the change, you also have to break the desires that you have. And it could be anything, it could be physical, social, emotional, or even intellectual desires that you might have. You have to kind of break those. For me, I was a workaholic, honestly. I always had two or three jobs at one given time. Two would be regular, either full time and part time, and then I would also have a business on my own on the side. I worked most of my life, 12 to 16 hours a day, but I enjoyed it. I loved it. Everything that I did, I enjoyed. I chose my path and my career purposefully, and it worked, and it just was so much fun. And I loved the people that I worked with and for, and I loved my career. I was very lucky, but it was a strategic luck, right? It was a desire that I had, and I went for it. And most of my life I always had plans, but then I had to rest. And through this process of letting go of repeating patterns and letting go of the complacency that I was living in my life, letting go of all of the desires that I had previously had, that was one of the hardest things that I had to do. And I don't know about you, but letting go of everything that you thought you were, that is enormously difficult. And I can't say that I don't know what I'm going to become. I can't say I know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't. And I have to be okay with that now, because I'm now in a place of rest. I'm in a place of healing. I'm in a place where finally, I can let go of the desire to keep grinding in my life. And that's new for me. That's really new. And it's not easy. I find myself doing some writing here and there. And a couple times I found myself saying, it's hard to rest. Resting is difficult. Or, resting takes effort. And for me, it does, because that's not my nature. That is not my nature. But my need right now is to heal. My need has been to really slow down and take a rest and remove some of the complacency from my life, remove some of the desires that I previously had, and come to terms with that my life is no longer what it was. I don't, like I said, I don't know what it's becoming, and maybe you don't either. Um, but that's okay. You know, I'm I'm a mom until the day I die, right? That that's a given. I'm a grandmother until the day I die. That is a given. Outside of that, I'm an employee, I'm dedicated, things like that, but we have to start describing ourselves a little bit differently and looking at our lives as if they're more than just what we do for others, right? Who are you at the core? What do you want? How can you describe yourself where it's not a description of how you help others? And that's important, right? It's important to heal yourself from the inside out. In Proverbs 132 it says, "The complacency of fools will destroy them." And I can tell you that mine nearly did. I was living um you know, I was a good person, but I was tough. I was really tough. I was much tougher on the people that I loved than they would have liked. Um, and but I found myself, as tough as I was and as much as I expected from those that I loved, I also felt myself giving too much of myself, and becoming complacent in those relationships that weren't healthy for me, that weren't good for me, and that sometimes led me to sin. Um, it's not that I, didn't enjoy some of the times that I had, but it was not the kind of life that I should have been living, to live a godly existence, right? To think about my soul and what's going to happen in the everlasting life, right? And am I going to attain that? So one of the things that I wrote here is you can't heal if you're not willing to give up the parts of yourself that are making you sick. And that's what I've had to do. There's been a lot of things that have had to go. There's been a lot of things that had to be revamped, restructured, um, and realized, right, within myself. I had to realize who I was and what I enjoyed in life. I'm still looking. I'm still doing things that I've not done in 20 or 30 years. I'm um, trying new things. I'm just putting myself out there in different ways that I've never done before, and that's perfect, for me. And I think the more that I do that, the better I am at removing complacency, removing like overwhelming desire, because I'm trying new things, I'm doing new things, I'm removing all the old identities that I have. And that's been the biggest challenge, right? Because when you relate yourself as being something particular, and for me, it was my career and my children. Well, my children grew and they had children, and that was great. I became a new identity. I became a grandmother, but I lost what I had known for some, 30 something years. So when you relate yourself as a mother, and you relate yourself as an executive, or a manager, those are the things when you get to a certain point 30 years later, and those are no longer the descriptions that you can use to describe yourself, you don't know what you have left. There's literally nothing left. And so you have to go searching. You have to go find what's left of you. You have to dig deep. You have to put yourself first. You have to remove all of the things that make you sick, all of the things that make you complacent, all of the things that are desires that are unhealthy in your life, and rethink everything, revamp your life. You can't cling to those habits and the identities that have actually driven you to the point, to me, drove me to the point of sickness. Maybe to others, it drives you to the point um, of just suffering, right? And Paul calls for in Colossians 3 5 through 10 to put a death to earthly desires. And it's okay to rest. I guess I would just leave you with a couple things, right? St. Francis de Sales says, "Do not lose your inward peace for anything in the world, even if your whole world seems upset." And that's been a lot of the path, as I'm looking at my journey over the last few years. I know people want to help, and I thank you for that. But I'm at the stage right now that uh, as much as I appreciate the desire to help, I really need to focus on healing, and I really need to focus on um, restructuring who I am as a person and where I go with that, you know? And I think we all get to that point, men and women. We all get to that point. They call it what you will, midlife crisis and whatnot, but we all get to that point where we either are not happy living in the labels and the descriptions that we have attached to us. And so many men go through that. They are labeled and described in a certain way, and they wig out and, go buy some fancy cars or get divorced and marry younger women instead of dealing completely with themselves. Women, leave their families, or their families grow older, and they're left to seek others to take care of. But then there's these small few that want to do God's work and want to live that everlasting life with God, and want to build themselves as something that's new, something that's different and bigger and grander than what they were before. And sometimes that takes a lot of time. Sometimes you don't know what that's going to look like or how that's going to work out. But I just want you to know that when you're healing, it is okay to rest. It is okay to heal, and it's okay to say no. And to just keep walking your path, no matter, like St. Francis de Sales said, no matter whether your world seems so upset at you for doing so. It's okay. So until next time, keep healing.